The trees in Wyoming whispered in shades of amber and ash as autumn claimed the land. A thin fog had rolled in early that morning, clinging to the forest floor like smoke that refused to rise. Eliza Monroe moved slowly along the ridge trail. The familiar crunch of leaves beneath her boots the only sound besides her own breathing. She came here often, alone. By choice. Ever since her father disappeared 3 years ago, leaving behind only a locked cabin, a cold trail, and a growing file of unanswered questions. Eliza had traded gallery walls and city crowds for the quiet of pine and silence. She painted now in near solitude. Her only neighbors were the birds, the deer, and the unspoken weight of a mystery that had never let her go. She had not expected company. And certainly not this kind. The first thing she saw was a shape in the mist, vague, moving, low to the ground. Her breath caught. Cougar, wounded bear. She backed up, one hand instinctively sliding to the small canister of pepper spray clipped to her belt. Then the shape stumbled. It was a dog. No, a German shepherd. Large but gaunt, ribs showing faintly under matted fur. Something was strapped across its back. A heavy, dark green military pack that hung awkwardly over its sides. Eliza froze as the dog limped forward. Head low, one leg dragging behind. It didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't flinch when she stepped closer. It just looked at her. Its eyes, one amber, one cloudy with an old scar, held hers for a second longer than she could understand. Then it collapsed. Eliza rushed forward before she could talk herself out of it. Up close, the dog was worse off than she'd thought. Blood crusted around its shoulder. One paw was torn and swollen. The pack it carried was stained. The straps biting into its body. "I'm not gonna hurt you," she whispered, breath misting. "I promise." Her hands trembled as she unclipped the pack, slowly sliding it off the animal's back. It was military issue, no doubt, worn, weathered, but still sealed. The dog whimpered once, not in fear, but exhaustion. Then it let her work. Inside the top pouch was gauze, empty ration packs, a plastic water bladder, sloshing faintly, and at the very bottom, taped into a waterproof pouch, was a USB drive. Black, unmarked. Next to it, buried under a medical wrap, lay a small GPS tracker, blinking with a red light. Eliza's stomach twisted. She looked back at the dog. It was watching her, barely, one ear twitching with every sound in the forest. "Who the hell are you?" she murmured. No tags, no collar, only a faint tattoo inside one ear. K906, Echo. She should have gone back for help. Called someone, the ranger station, animal control, anyone. But she didn't. She did what instinct told her to do. She took the dog home. Her cabin wasn't far, an hour's walk if you were healthy. 20 minutes if you were hauling an unconscious shepherd across your shoulders like a firefighter in a forest fire. Eliza managed half of it on adrenaline, the rest on fury at herself for caring so quickly. Back inside, she laid him on a blanket beside the fireplace and went to work. Warm water, clean gauze, Her father had taught her basic field triage back when he was still alive. She remembered the lessons more than she liked to admit. The paw was bad, but not shattered. The shoulder had an old scar under the new bleeding, probably reopened during whatever mission, or escape. This dog had just survived. She left the USB untouched for now. But the GPS tracker, she wrapped in foil, shoved in a metal tin, and stuffed in the freezer. Something about it chilled her more than the actual cold. Eliza sat back, studying the strange creature now resting at her feet. German Shepherd, military trained, wounded, and carrying what looked like classified information. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a stray. This was a message. The dog stirred in his sleep. A quiet sound came from his throat, barely a whine, almost like a word trying to be spoken in another language. Eliza whispered, "Echo." The dog's ear twitched. That was enough. Night came hard and fast. Eliza lit a single oil lamp and stared at the USB on the table. It felt like a line between who she had been for the past 3 years and who she might have to become again. Questions clawed at her. Why did he have it? Who sent him? And who might come looking? She looked back at Echo. He was asleep again, breathing shallow but steady, one paw over his muzzle like a child. She reached for her sketchbook without thinking and started to draw, his shape in the firelight. The weight in his eyes. The strange aura of intelligence and weariness he carried. Then she stopped, because as she shaded in his fur, she noticed something strange. There, on the edge of his ribcage, half hidden beneath old scarring, a brand. Letters burned into the skin. Silex, prototype. Her hand went still. She didn't know what it meant. But she knew one thing. Someone wanted Echo found. Someone else wanted him forgotten. And somehow, she had just stepped into a war she didn't know existed. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting long, flickering shadows across the wooden walls of Eliza's cabin. Outside, the forest stood still, wrapped in silence and mist. The wind had died down, and with it, the noise of the world. Inside, Eliza stared at the USB drive on the table. It sat there like a puzzle piece that didn't belong in her life, yet somehow had always been waiting to fall into place. Echo lay on a blanket nearby, breathing steadily. She had cleaned his wounds again, wrapped the worst ones. He hadn't made a sound, only watched her with those same quiet eyes that seemed to see more than a dog should. She'd offered him food, plain boiled chicken and water. He ate slowly, methodically, not like an animal desperate for survival, but like a soldier trained to take what's given without waste. Eliza pushed her laptop closer and plugged in the drive. No Wi-Fi, no connection to anything but the files themselves. She'd designed her life that way, for peace, for privacy. Now that isolation felt like a thin shield against whatever truth this thing carried. The drive loaded. 5 folders. 2 locked. 3 open. The open ones were labeled. Logistics. Echo_unit. Delta Mist _visual. She clicked on Echo_unit first. Inside were logs, short files. Mostly incomplete. Names and numbers. A few training routines. Several video files with corrupted thumbnails. One folder simply read, "Operative K906 Echo." She clicked. A video file loaded, flickering with static before stabilizing. A training field. Fenced. Clean. A man in military fatigues barked an order. Echo. Engage. Mark III. From the edge of the frame. A German shepherd appeared, muscular. Alert. Fast. He dashed forward, circled a moving target, and sat before it. No attack. Just assessment. Stand down. The dog immediately backed off. Eliza leaned in. It was him. The same scar across the shoulder. The same gaze. This wasn't an average working dog. This was a trained intelligence asset. A soft sound broke her focus. Echo had lifted his head. His eyes were locked on the screen. Eliza, testing a hunch, replayed the command from the video. Echo, engage. Mark III. He stood, still shaky from his wounds, but poised. Then, slowly, he sat, exactly like in the footage. Eliza's breath hitched. "You remember," she whispered another command from the log. Echo, identify threat. His ears twitched. He scanned the room, locked briefly on the window. Then back to her. Something behind his eyes changed. Awareness. Recognition. Not obedience. Understanding. She sank into the chair. Overwhelmed. Whatever program had created Echo hadn't just trained animals to follow orders. They had taught him to think. She opened the second folder. Delta Mist _visual. Inside, encrypted files, mostly unreadable. One slideshow with a corrupted title. She clicked anyway. Black slides. Faded text. Half sentences. Operation Delta Mist. Autonomous response units. Civilian suppression readiness. Another slide flickered into view. Phase 2. Behavioral merging with human field engineers. Eliza froze. In the bottom corner of the slide was a name. Dr. Marcus Monroe, lead bio-behavioral architect. Her father. Her hands trembled as she clicked again. In-field cognitive syncing shows promising acceleration when partner is familial or familiar. Results suggest data corrupted. Subject Echo bonded 32% faster with Monroe during closed-phase protocols. Eliza stared blankly. Her father hadn't just worked on this project. He had worked with Echo. Echo knew him. And then, what? He vanished during a research accident in Utah. No body, no answers. A classified investigation. Then a closed case. Until now, she'd accepted it, grieved it. But if he had been part of Operation Delta Mist, maybe it hadn't been an accident at all. Eliza stood slowly and walked to Echo. She knelt beside him. "Did you know my dad?" The dog blinked. Then, gently, he leaned forward and nudged her palm with his nose. She felt her throat tighten. "You remember him, don't you?" He lay back down, head on his paws, but didn't look away. "Not tonight. Not anymore." Morning broke slowly, dragging pale light through the trees. Eliza packed the laptop and USB into a steel lockbox. Whatever Delta Mist was, someone had gone to great lengths to bury it. And Echo? He had carried that knowledge through God knows what kind of nightmare to get to her. That wasn't an accident. That was intent. She scribbled notes from the files, keywords, project dates, mention of civilian suppression trials. Most of it made no sense yet. But one word kept circling her mind like smoke. Silex. The brand burned into Echo's skin. The name of a private military contractor, rumored to run Black Ops biotech programs across conflict zones. They had been part of Delta Mist. Maybe they still were. And maybe they were still watching. She glanced at the foil-wrapped tracker still in her freezer. Was it still pinging? Did it matter? She reached down and touched Echo's fur. We're in this now. You and me. He didn't move, but his tail tapped once against the floor. Eliza looked out the window. Past the edge of her woods, where the fog lingered like a curtain between her world and everything she'd tried to leave behind. Now she had something she never expected. A partner. And a truth too big to ignore. The morning mist was thick on the trail down to Granger's Creek, the nearest town a few miles southeast of Eliza's cabin. She had packed light, USB, some cash, a burner phone, a compact pistol she barely knew how to use. Echo walked beside her, no leash. Always a step ahead or behind. Ears swiveling like living radar. She didn't trust the woods anymore. Not after what she found on the USB. Not after seeing her father's name tied to a program that was never supposed to exist. She needed help. Legal help. Press. Someone who could make this bigger than whoever was chasing them. They had made it 2 miles down the ridge when Echo stopped cold. His body tensed, ears forward, nose raised. Then he growled, low, warning. Eliza dropped to a crouch without thinking. That's when she saw them. 3 men, black jackets, tactical rifles, full comm gear. Moving quietly through the underbrush, too coordinated to be hunters, too focused to be lost. One of them held a tablet. They weren't looking for animals. They were tracking something. Echo. Eliza whispered, barely audible, move. He turned sharply and bolted off the trail. Deeper into the woods. She followed. Gunshots rang out behind them, 2 sharp cracks splitting the silence. Bark exploded off a nearby tree. Eliza ducked and ran harder, legs slamming through brush and roots. Echo was fast despite his injury, darting through shadows like a ghost, doubling back to stay close. They sprinted downhill toward the river basin, where the forest thickened. She could hear voices behind them now. Chatter. Radio clicks. They weren't here to talk. They ran for nearly an hour, weaving through terrain that would have broken most people's ankles. Eliza's lungs burned, and her thighs screamed, but she didn't stop. Not when Echo turned sharply into a ravine lined with fallen pines. Not when he stopped beside an old rock outcrop and scratched at the ground. Eliza caught up, gasping. What? Echo pawed frantically at the underbrush. There was a rusted chain buried beneath moss and dirt. She pulled it, and with effort, unearthed a hinged slab of wood and metal, a trapdoor, a hidden hatch. Echo nosed it once, then backed up. Eliza opened it and stared into a tunnel of pitch darkness. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered. Then she climbed down. The bunker smelled of rot and old steel. Narrow, cramped, but dry. A single generator flickered to life when she hit the switch, casting weak orange light across a narrow hallway lined with plastic crates and metal filing cabinets. Echo limped in behind her and sat down, eyes scanning every inch of the space. Eliza moved quickly, cracked open one crate, then another. Her breath caught. Photos, test logs, medical scans, and more USB drives. All labeled, Delta Missed, Phase 2. She flipped through a folder. Subjects, names, coordinates, many marked as failed or disposed. These weren't rescue units. These were test assets, human and animal. A video file loaded on an ancient monitor in the corner. She played it without thinking. A man stood in a white lab coat. Her father. He looked tired, hollow-eyed. If anyone finds this, know that I tried to stop it. Echo is the last viable subject not compromised. I embedded a biometric limiter. But Silex intends to override all safeguards. He leaned into the camera. They don't want rescue animals. They want controllable weapons. Then the feed cut. Eliza staggered back. The truth was bigger than she imagined. This wasn't just about Echo. It was about everything he represented. Behind her, Echo stood suddenly, ears sharp. A sound. Footsteps. Coming closer. They'd found the hatch. Eliza turned, eyes wild. We have to go. But it was too late. The door burst open. Voices shouted down the corridor. She raised her hands instinctively. Heart pounding. A flashlight beam caught her face. Two men moved in fast. One grabbed her arm. The other raised a stun gun. Echo snarled, low and guttural, but didn't charge. Not yet. Eliza looked at him and whispered, "Run." He didn't move. She shook her head. Echo, go. A second passed. Then he did. Echo lunged at the far wall, crashing through a rusted shelf and vanishing through a side passage barely large enough for his frame. The soldiers spun, fired. Too slow. Echo was gone. One grabbed a radio. Subject has fled. North exit. Pursuit in progress. Another turned back to Eliza and slapped cuffs on her wrist. "You're done running." She didn't reply. But inside, she smiled. Because Echo wasn't just running. He was buying her time. Above ground, the forest stirred again. And somewhere in the distance, a lion-hearted dog carried secrets in his blood and a mission only he could finish. The facility loomed ahead like a skeleton of secrets, half swallowed by trees and time. Concrete walls cracked and choked with moss. Metal fences rusted but still wired with silent alarms. It hadn't been used in years, officially. But Eliza knew the truth. This place had never really closed. It had just gone deeper underground. Her heart pounded as she crouched behind a thicket, watching the side entrance with binoculars. The last 24 hours had been a blur. Escape from the forest outpost. Half-starved and bruised. Finding an old number at the bottom of her father's hidden folder. And making the call she never thought she'd make. Marcus Grant, ex-CIA, once a close friend of her father's. Now a ghost in the system. He picked her up in an unmarked SUV at the edge of the ranger station, gave her a protein bar, and simply said, "I've been waiting for this." Now they were here, and Echo was inside. Eliza swallowed hard. "They'll kill him." Marcus checked the charge on his weapon. "Then we don't give them time." He handed her a small, square device. "Portable satellite uplink. Encrypted. You get to the server room. Plug in the USB. And hit send. I'll get Echo." "You sure about that?" Marcus gave a wry smile. "I trained with your father. He designed those dogs to listen, not just to follow. And if they've broken him," Marcus's voice lowered, "then we bring him home anyway." They breached at night. Marcus slipped through the east fence, disabling the external sensors. Eliza followed behind, clutching the SAT uplink and her father's flash drive like a lifeline. Inside, the place was darker than expected. No hum of machines, no chatter, just flickering bulbs and water dripping from cracked pipes. But the security was still real. They moved silently through long corridors until they reached the lab sector. Doors were cracked open, desks abandoned, notes yellowed and curling. Eliza turned to a rusted door labeled Observation Unit D. Echo. She moved toward it instinctively. But Marcus held her back. A guard was inside. They waited. The door creaked open, and Marcus moved like a shadow. One strike, silent. The man dropped. Eliza stepped inside. Her breath caught. Echo lay on a gurney, his body bandaged and bloodied, one leg restrained by a steel cuff. He looked up. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. Then, his ears twitched. A soft whine escaped his throat. "Echo," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm here." He tried to stand, collapsed. Eliza rushed to his side, tears welling. Marcus picked the lock on the cuff and unstrapped the restraints. "Can he walk? We'll carry him if we have to." Together, they lifted him off the gurney and onto a canvas stretcher. "Go," Marcus said. "Servers down that corridor. 10 minutes. Max. I'll hold them." Eliza hesitated, then nodded. The server room was cold, buzzing with quiet menace. Eliza crossed the floor to the mainframe, plugged in the satellite uplink, and inserted the USB. The screen flickered. Password prompt. She paused, then typed the one phrase her father used to write at the end of his letters. Delta M1912, Delta missed. Year of initiation. Access granted. Dozens of files populated the screen. Test logs. Human trials. Decommission orders signed by corporate and government figures. She hit send. A loading bar appeared. Transmitting 9%. A voice crackled over the speaker system. Security breach detected. Lockdown initiated. The lights turned red. Eliza held her breath. The bar moved. 42%, 68%, 91%. Gunfire echoed from the hallway. Then silence. 100%. Upload complete. Global sync initiated. The world had it now. They couldn't bury Echo again. Back at the lab corridor, Marcus was bleeding. He had taken down 2 guards but caught a round in the shoulder. Eliza helped drag him toward the exit while Echo, weak but conscious, limped behind them, refusing to be carried. Sirens wailed in the distance, too far to stop them, but close enough to confirm what Eliza suspected. The upload had worked. Someone was watching now. Someone who couldn't look away. 2 days later, the world exploded. Major news outlets broke the story. Experimental BIOWEAPON program exposed. Inside Project Delta missed. Photos of animal testing. Redacted documents. Footage of failed human-animal interface trials. And at the center of it all, one surviving subject. Echo. Lawmakers scrambled. The Department of Defense issued a statement denying oversight. Silex, the private contractor behind it, was raided by federal agents. Multiple arrests were made. Court orders followed. And across the country, people asked the same question. How did a dog carry the truth farther than any man? Eliza sat on the porch of Marcus's remote safehouse, looking out at the pine trees. Echo lay beside her, bandaged but alert, eyes scanning the woods. She reached down and touched his paw. They tried to break you. He blinked. But you remembered who you were. From behind, Marcus approached slowly, shoulder still wrapped. The story's out. People are listening. Do you think it'll change anything? Maybe not everything, but enough. Eliza looked down at Echo. They'll try again, won't they, somewhere else? Marcus nodded. Probably. Then we make sure we're watching. She turned to Echo. You up for one more mission? Partner? His tail thumped once. And in the distance, truth echoed louder than any lie. The snow came early that year. It blanketed the ridges and wrapped the trees in silence. The same kind of silence that once filled Eliza Monroe's cabin like fog, lonely, heavy, isolating. But now, it was different. Now, silence meant peace. Because this time, she wasn't alone. Echo lay stretched on the porch. Eyes half closed, nose twitching at every sound the wind carried. His coat had grown thicker, glossier, the raw patches from wounds and old experiments long since healed. He still limped when it was cold. Still bore the brand on his ribs that had once defined him. But here, in this place, he was no one's subject. He was simply Echo. And this was Haven Ridge, the first rehabilitation center in the country dedicated to animals discarded by the military-industrial complex. It stood on a stretch of land deep in Wyoming's forest edge. Not far from where Eliza first found Echo stumbling out of the fog. It had started as an idea. Then a shed. Then 3 kennels. Now it was a full-fledged facility. With open-air enclosures, veterinary equipment, therapy trails, and a growing staff of volunteers. Some were biologists. Others were veterans. All of them had seen what had been done, and wanted to help put it right. The first resident after Echo was a Labrador named Delta, whose ears had been mutilated to house implantable sensors. Then a falcon with permanent corneal damage from experimental optics. Then 2 Belgian Malinois who refused to let anyone near them for days, until Echo lay beside their cages in silence until they stopped shaking. He had become more than a survivor. He was the heart of the place. Their quiet leader. Eliza walked out with 2 mugs of hot cider. handing one to Marcus Grant, who sat on the bench near the observation trail. His arm was out of the sling now, though his shoulder still ached in the cold. They watched as a new arrival, a grey-coated shepherd with a missing toe, paced the back pen restlessly. Echo stood nearby, not intruding, just watching. "He does that with all the new ones," Eliza said softly. "Yeah, it's like he knows what they've been through." "He does." Marcus took a sip of cider. "You could have walked away after the exposé. The government offered witness protection. A whole new life." Eliza smiled faintly. "I didn't want a new life. I wanted to rebuild the one I never had a chance to live." She gestured toward the facility behind them, built from reclaimed lumber and quiet resilience. This is home now." Marcus nodded. "Your dad would have been proud." Eliza looked at Echo, who was now slowly approaching the new dog, lying down in the snow just within reach. The shepherd paused, then cautiously lay down, too, still tense, but curious. "I think he would have liked Echo," she said. "He did," Marcus replied. "He helped create him, but more importantly, he helped him choose who to be." Inside the main cabin, on a wall of photographs, there was one picture framed larger than the rest. It showed Eliza, kneeling beside Echo on the day of his legal exoneration, a day when the courts officially declared him not property, not evidence, but a sentient, protected life. The photo was taken just after the ruling. She had leaned in and whispered something to Echo. No one heard what she said. But in the photo, Echo's eyes were closed, and her hand rested over his heart. Letters began arriving from around the world. Veterans who had served with trained animals. Whistleblowers with leads on secret trials. Families who'd lost loved ones to classified programs they never understood. And children, sending drawings of Echo, calling him, the dog who told the truth. Eliza answered every one. The truth wasn't just a story now, it was a mission. One evening, just before sunset, a reporter came by for an interview. He was young, polite, clearly nervous. At the end of the visit, he asked, "What made you do all this?" Eliza thought for a long moment. She looked at Echo, who was lying beside a blind hawk's perch, just keeping company. Then she said, "I lost my father to a lie. I lost myself to grief. And I found my way back because of a dog who didn't bark, didn't growl, just carried the truth in silence until someone finally listened." The reporter wrote it down carefully. As he packed up, she walked him to the gate. "It must have been hard," he said quietly. "All of it." Eliza smiled. "It was. But hard isn't the same as hopeless." That night, in her studio cabin, Eliza sketched again. She hadn't drawn for herself in a long time. Not since the first painting of Echo. Now, on canvas, she captured him under the sunset sky, surrounded by animals once broken, now healing. In the painting, Echo stood at the center, not tall or dominant, just present, calm, anchored, watching, as always. When she finished, she signed it at the bottom with 2 words. The new mission. The world still had secrets. Still had programs buried in shadows. But now, Echo had lit something they couldn't silence again. Not with a cage. Not with a brand. Not even with silence. Because someone had listened. And then, someone had believed. And finally, someone had done something about it. In the end, Eliza didn't just rescue Echo. He rescued her, too. Not with teeth or growls or dramatic leaps into danger. But by being what no one expected a machine to be. A soul. A memory. A second chance. And in a world that tried to erase him, Echo chose to leave a mark. Not in blood, but in trust.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.